I'm so excited to welcome Dr. Ken Berry to my channel today. Dr. Berry is a board-certified medical doctor with over 20 years of clinical experience, and he's the author of the book, Lies My Doctor Told Me. I link that in the show notes for you guys. All right, Dr. Berry, when your own health started to decline and you took a step back and reevaluated the advice you were giving to your patients because it wasn't working for you, let's start there. What happened? Like, how did you realize that the standard of care wasn't making your patients or you any healthier?
Well, thank you for having me, Roxana. And first, let me correct something you said. I am no longer board certified. Um, Primary care doctors they have to apply and take a big 4 hour test every few years. And basically, studying for the test is like studying a pharmaceutical infomercial. And so
Yes.
I'm not really interested in that. So I've let my board certification lapse voluntarily. Um, the way that I realized that the standard of care, the standard recommendations for weight loss and for reversing diabetes weren't working was because I was pre-diabetic and I was severely obese. And I adopted the advice. I started actually living the advice because, in all honesty, before I got on a scale and checked my A1C, I was like, yeah, I've gained some weight. It's no big deal. But when I saw the number on the scale, and I saw the number on the lab report for my A1C, I was like, oh crap, this is not good. I did not realize that it was this out of hand. And so I immediately stopped all the foolishness. I stopped the Dutch chocolate milk with powdered donuts crumbled up in it. I stopped all of that kind of foolishness, all the junk food. I stopped eating bacon. I started using vegetable oil, stopped the bacon grease, although that's how I was raised. Granny Berry always had a bacon grease canister on the stove. And I'm like, well, okay, I got to quit all that stuff. And so the American Diabetes Association handout that I'd given to hundreds, if not thousands of patients, I actually read it for the first time. And
Yep.
I actually started to follow it. And I started jogging 3 times a week, 1 or 2 miles at a time. I started drinking fruit juice smoothies. I started eating whole grain bread. I started using margarine and vegetable oil. And I did that for 3 solid months. And
But
so
that's
the
what they
difference,
tell you to do, right?
that's right. But here's the difference. I had been giving my patients all that advice for years, but then they would come back. They were always metabolically sicker. They'd always gain weight, and I always assumed that they were full of crap. They hadn't
Mhm.
actually done that. They were laying on the couch eating powdered donuts like me. That's why this was happening. And so when I tightened up and actually started to follow the guidelines, I fully expected that I would have a noticeable improvement in the weight on the scale and the A1C result. I assumed that there would be a large signal showing up, like, oh, yes, this is exactly what I should have done. And at the end of that 3 months, I had actually gained 2 or 3 more pounds and was even more pre diabetic. My A1C had went up 1 or 2 tenths of a percentage point. So it was at that moment I was expecting, you can imagine, I was expecting to see a large signal because I was actually following my advice that I've been giving patients
Yep.
for the first time. There was there was actually a negative signal. Actually, I got sicker rather than better, and it was that was the moment I was like that. Oh, because if somebody comes in with a severe bladder infection, and I send off a urine culture and it comes back the bacteria is sensitive for ciprofloxacin. I'm like, okay, put them on Cipro. Boom, immediate signal. The bladder infection UTI starts to get better within just days. Excellent signal, right? That's what I mean by signal.
It works.
Someone comes to the emergency department. They've got a dislocated shoulder. We start an IV. We give them some muscle relaxers and some pain medicine, and I'd perform the maneuver I was taught in residency. Immediate relief. Boom. Oh my God. It feels so much better. Thank you so much. Immediate signal. I got no signal from 3 months of the ADA diet and jogging 3 days a week. I freaking hate to jog, but I did it because I knew that I was metabolically sick, and none of that helped at all. And so it was at that moment I realized there's something definitionally wrong. Something that I thought I knew, just like 1+1 is 2. I know if you adopt this diet and do these things that you will get healthier. it didn't happen. And I thought, well, I'm faced with, several conclusions. Maybe I'm a special snowflake. Maybe I'm genetically different than all my other patients. Obviously, that's foolishness. We're all essentially the same when it comes to diet. And so I had, then my other thing I was faced with that's also equally repulsive is that maybe I was taught incorrectly. Maybe I don't know what I thought I knew about metabolic health. And so that's when I started to read outside of the box. I kind of picked my nose up off the grindstone and started looking around. Well, what's going to fix me? I can't be a 300-pound doctor in
That's how you
Tennessee.
clued
All
in.
all my patients will make fun of me because that's just how we are here in Tennessee.
Hmm.
You sarcasm, wit. We point out when somebody's full of crap, and I couldn't be a fat doctor. There's just no way I could finish my career. And so I had to figure out what to do. And so that's kind of what sent me down this road on this journey to, being healthier now at 55 than I was back then at 38, 39.
So it's fair to say that your views on nutrition changed dramatically. And how did that shift the advice you were giving your patients?
Well, I immediately stopped giving the old advice of, join Weight Watchers, join the gym, or eat less and move more, or, oh, you've been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. Here's the ADA's handout. Follow this, and everything will be fine. I immediately stopped giving that advice because I had proven to myself that that doesn't work in a patient who's highly motivated. See, that's the thing. I switched from being the doctor to when I saw that number on the scale and the number on my A1C report.
Hmm.
I slipped into the patient role. I'm like, crap, I'm sick. I got to fix this. And my own advice I'd been giving for years did not fix it. It didn't even fix it a little bit, made it
It made it
worse.
worse.
Made it worse. And so I was like, okay. So I stopped giving that advice immediately. And I started reading every book that I could get my hands on, every research paper. I read books from the early 1900s, the late 1800s about nutrition and about weight loss. Just so many different things I looked at. And I started to see a pattern that people who ate diets very heavy in meat and very low in carbohydrates, it seemed like they got a very strong signal. And so then I also started looking at the modern nutrition research with fresh eyes. And that's something that's very important. I stopped looking at it like, oh, this is a gospel. And I started looking at it a bit more critically. And so what I would see is I would read a study about the ADA's diet or the plant-based diet, Mediterranean. And what I would see is the signal that they had found, the results were minuscule,
It was more
right?
like
Like
noise.
it was just a lot of noise, basically. I'm like,
Mm.
so I was blindly believing all this research. I was blindly believing all of the conclusions of these research studies. And also I would read, reviews by doctors in the medical journals like, oh, it's well known that the Mediterranean diet, blah, 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 blah. And I just bought that. It's like, well, he's a preeminent doctor at Tufts or Yale or Harvard. Who am I? I'm just this redneck doctor in Tennessee. But when I started to read those with a critical eye, I was like, this is literally almost doesn't even reach statistical significance. Barely. And then the signal is almost, you'd have to have a stethoscope to hear the signal. Why am I but then
Everyone
here's
bought it though.
these other
Everyone.
people eating lots of meat and eating low carb, the signal's huge. And I'm like, well, okay. And back then I just thought of keto and carnivore as weight loss diets. I didn't think of it as anything
When
else.
was that? Like in
Oh gosh,
2000.
that was 13, 12, 13 years ago
So you were a
now.
really early adopter.
Very early, personally, yes. And so
Yes.
I read the Primal Blueprint. I read the Atkins Diet Revolution and the Paleo Diet by Lauren Cordain. So it was right after all those books had come out, whatever year that was, maybe the year after Primal Blueprint came out. That's when I read all these books. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna try this because obviously the ADA diet didn't work worth a damn. This can't be any worse, right? So I'm going to try this for 90 days or so. And I did, and it got immediate signal. I was still eating much higher carb with that than I do now, but immediately I started to lose weight. Immediately my A1C started to come down. And so I'm like, okay, so I'm getting signal from this, but I didn't understand the physiology behind it at that time at all. I just thought it was a weight loss hack. Somehow it hacked your system. I didn't
Yeah.
realize that these very
The
basic
fat.
principles of physiology and biochemistry involved here, and just human nutrition.
Yep. So when you started giving your patients that advice, what would you say was the most memorable success story?
Mm. So I initially started giving this advice only to my patients who were severely obese. They had a BMI back when I thought BMI was, a good marker for an individual. If they had a BMI above 32 to 35 and they would come in, I would say, hey, and because all my patients are like, Doc, you're looking better. Wow, what are you doing? And so I would just be like, I'm just trying to eat better to everybody. But if your BMI was 32 or higher, I'll be like, well, I'm eating this diet that's full of lots of fatty meat, and it's I've really cut out all the carbs. I stopped eating all the bread and all the grains, no sugar, no added sugar, no fruit juice ever, not many fruits at all. And they're like, how much have you lost so far? So I would tell them whatever the number was at that time, and they're like, well, could I try that? And I'm like, sure, because you're at such high risk, right? Having a BMI of 32 or higher, you're at very high risk of literally every morbidity.
Yep.
Falling down the stairs, your risk is increased with a BMI over 32, right? Blood clot, heart attack, stroke, early death, everything. You're at increased
Even
risk.
the
So
flu, like anything.
yeah, what's the harm? I'm not going to hurt this person who weighs 395 pounds. This is not going to hurt them if it helps them. Hallelujah. And so I started, and immediately when they would come back in 3 to 6 months, remember that word signal? Huge signal, lost 40 pounds, lost 50 pounds, lost 35 pounds. A1C cut by 3 percentage points, not 0.3, but 3. And I never saw that. When I would see a newly diagnosed type 2 diabetic, I would start them on metformin and either one or two other things. If the A1C was high enough, I would start them straight on insulin. Never saw somebody's A1C come down 3 points or 3.5 points in three
It's
months.
chronic
Ever.
progressive, right?
Right. It's chronic and progressive. Right. But these people, I didn't put them on any medicine. And their A1C would drop by 3 percentage points, and they would lose 30, 40, 50 pounds in 3 months. That's a big signal, Roxana. And
Oh
I'm
yeah.
like, oh, I think I'm going to start to recommend this to anybody with a BMI above 30. And so and I just kept lowering the BMI to where I would recommend this. And because also nothing bad happened. Nobody had a heart attack. Nobody had a stroke. Nobody had any kind of diabetic complication. It seemed like the complications got fewer in this group. Like I wasn't seeing the complications that I was used to seeing at the same rate. It seemed like the rate of complications was decreasing. So I'm like, okay, well, and also at this same time, I was reading more. I was literally had pulled back out my physiology textbooks from
Yep.
medical school, and had actually read with doctor eyes, not medical student eyes, just blindly believing everything, but critically read as a doctor what the physiology textbook said. And I'm like, oh, okay. So then I was like, so there's a physiological underpinning for this way of eating.
It
And that's
has to be.
way, way before I started reading archaeology and anthropology. Way, way, way before that. I've only been doing that for the last 3 years or so. But even in just the basic physiology, it's right there. It's in the textbook, but only if you look at it with fresh eyes, and you're not looking at it with the blinded eyes of a student who believes that everything the professor says is gospel.
Yeah, I can imagine how that would go. So you started this with your patients, and did you have like one story where you would say, "Oh wow, like I
Mm,
never expected that." I mean,
yeah,
like people think when they eat animal fat, it will. This is what I was told. It will
yeah,
fuel your inflammatory arthritis, and you should only eat
yeah,
plant-based and
yeah.
vegetable oils,
I
seed
had
oils.
one specific patient I remember very well. We're still friends on Facebook to this day. He was a minister, and he was so obese that he walked with two canes, one cane in each hand. His knees, every step was just excruciating pain. And I had actually already referred him to orthopedics, and they were looking at replacing his bad knee first, and then when he recovered the other knee. but the orthopedic surgeon's like, this dude's BMI was like 55. They're like, I can't operate on this guy. You're going to have to get some weight off him.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, so he's one of the people I told about this. He was so heavy, Roxana, he could not weigh on our office scale. He went up to 450 pounds. He had to go to our local co-op to weigh on their scales that they weighed huge cows and sacks of grain and stuff like that. But he had to go to the co-op to weigh. He couldn't weigh on a 450-pound scale. He maxed it out. And so he came back in 3 months later. He was walking with one cane. And he said, I'm pretty sure I've lost weight. I'm going to go to the co-op today after I see you. And he did, and he called and left a message with my nurse. He had lost 45 pounds in 3 months.
That is
I'm
amazing.
like, okay. And he said, man, my knees are so much better. And at that point, that was so long ago, I thought, well, it's just the mechanical advantage, right? He's lost 45 pounds. So obviously his knees aren't having to carry as much weight, blah, 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 blah. He comes back for the 6 month checkup. He doesn't have any canes. And he's lost something like 78 pounds. Then his third 3 month follow up, because we were doing this, he had to come every 3 months, right? Because we were trying to get
Yep.
some weight off. He wasn't taking any weight loss medications. He hadn't changed any of his other prescriptions. The third time he came in, he was again walking with no cane, and he was able to weigh on the office scale.
Huh.
He had lost over 100 pounds in 9 months, and he could walk. He was like, Doc, you don't understand what an honor it is to be able to walk up the steps to the pulpit to deliver my message and not have to walk up there like a cripple with a cane or with usually two canes. He said,
Yeah.
you can't understand what that's like. And so we're, like I said, we're still friends on Facebook, and I still check in with him and he checks in with me, and he's still way down from his highest. And every now and then he'll stray, like all sheep are known to do, right? But as soon as he strays and he starts to feel the pain and the weight coming back, he goes right back to that diet that he and I talked about all those years ago, and the weight comes right back off, and the knees get to feeling better, and he's back in the saddle again, walking without his canes. And so that's probably the one, because he was just a salt of the earth guy, honest as the day is long. He would have just told me this didn't help me at all. He was that kind of guy. He
But it did.
cried the third visit. He cried.
Yeah.
And we took a picture together, and I posted it on my Facebook page. I think it's private now. After the clinic burn, we made it unpublished. But we took a picture in the hallways. Like, I want to get a picture with you because people need to know about this. This is powerful.
Yeah. Okay, so we told it today too. It is powerful, and I myself have had not similar, but a very strong signal. Let's say, put it that way. So, but now back to you. You eat carnivore right now, right?
Yep,
What does
99%.
what does a typical day for you look like? Like what, for example, today, like what was your first
Yep.
meal?
So today here it's 3:19 p.m. and I broke my fast. I've been out on the farm working. I've already posted a YouTube video. I've already had an interview. Me and Nisha had a business meeting, and I broke my fast about 2 p.m. And some days I'll go much later than that. But today I broke it at 2 p.m. with a pound and a half of ground beef, some sliced up salami, some little balls of mozzarella cheese, because I freaking love cheese. I'm addicted to cheese. I'm first to
Very.
admit. I know. And I think I had 2 olives that were in with the salami. And yeah, that's what I broke my fast with. So that's my first meal of the day. Now, yesterday I did effectively the same thing. And typically, when I do that early in the day, like 2 p.m., I'll have a second meal. But last night, Misha and I we were in the sunroom watching some politics on TV. We won't talk about that, but that's what we were watching. And
Right. You don't want to get my YouTube channel into trouble before
that's
I even
right. That's
start,
right.
right?
And so I was like, it was that time where I typically eat again, but I'm like, I'm not really hungry. And
Yeah.
so I didn't have that second meal yesterday. And that may repeat itself today, or when we're sitting in there watching something else political tonight, I may go, yeah, I'm hungry. I think I'm going to eat something. And so that's another thing that I never, ever dreamed that a diet could do, is give you such amazing ability to hear the feedback from your body, to be able to distinguish between is this a carb craving? Am I bored? Am I anxious? Am I upset? Or am I truly hungry? And for so many of us, that's impossible. You can't tease that out.
I
All
also
you know is
find
you
the
need something and you want something.
I also find the feeling of satiety is not overwhelming. I call it blissful satiety
Yep.
because it is satiety without being full, without an extended stomach, without being nauseous. It just feels good.
Yep. Now, for some people, the satiety, that sense of feeling perfectly full, comfortably stuffed, as I say, for some people that is overwhelming for a while because they've literally never experienced that in their whole
Yeah,
life. They've never experienced true hunger that wasn't all conflated with all these other emotions and feelings and addictions.
yep,
But they also have never experienced true satiety. Not, oh, I stuffed myself with carbs. I'm going to be hungry again in 2 hours. I went to the Chinese buffet, right? And, I'm so full now I can barely stay awake, but in 2 hours I'm hungry again. That's not satiety. But when you really experience true satiety, it's freeing, isn't it, Roxana?
yeah.
You're
That's why I
free.
call it blissful satiety because it
Yeah,
is
yeah.
such
But I
a
think it's important to say that for some
fulfilling
people,
feeling.
yes, for some people, usually women, they've never felt true satiety their entire life because they've grazed, right? They've nibbled and they've snacked and they've
Yes.
never, right? And so it can be overwhelming and it can feel like nausea for a week or two. It's like every time I eat a big, my meat and eggs, like you tell me to, I feel nauseated. Like, oh, I've eaten too much. And it takes them a week or two for them to re-recognize that's not nausea. That's not, you don't feel sick. That's just that's satiety. You're just not familiar with it. Let me introduce you to your new friend because you're going to become very enamored with that satiety. You're going to be able to start to use that as a tool, but you got to get used to it first. And I don't see that signal much in men, but in women, I see that a lot because they've always been a snacker and a grazer and they've never really just eaten big, discrete meals.
Yeah. What I sometimes feel is that I feel fine. And then when I think, I should eat something, then I have a like slightly queasy feeling,
Yes.
almost
Yep.
nauseous. And then, oh, no, I'm good. I don't need to eat.
Yep. And that's satiety. But a lot of people will feel that. Seems like the majority of people are women. They'll feel that as nausea. And so when everybody else is getting ready to eat that evening meal, and you think about that, you're like, oh, no, I don't. Mm-mm. And it feels like nausea, but it's not. It's just satiety. You're still satiated because you ate so much healthy animal fat and animal protein. You're not hungry. And that's fine to skip that meal. You're not hungry.
Yummy animal fat. So you have a lot going on. You have a thriving, proper human diet community. It's a private community. You have YouTube, I don't know, like 4 million followers,
3.2,
subscribers.
something like that.
You have the conferences. You travel all over the world. How do you balance all of that? And of course, who keeps you in check?
I lost you on that last part.
Who
Repeat that
keeps you,
last.
like, how do you balance all that? Like, I mean, the farm, the videos, the
Yeah,
conferences,
yeah,
everything,
yeah.
and who keeps you in check? Like, who watches that you balance everything?
So I also have a farm. You brought that up. We have a full working 40-acre farm here. And also, I'm working with some other low carb doctors. We just founded the American Diabetes Society to actually give people with diabetes good, useful advice that will actually help them live longer and healthier instead of just take more medicine and eat more high carb foods. So yeah, I got a lot of plates spinning, and luckily for me, I have ADHD. And in the past, it was super severe back before I started eating ketovore carnivores, very severe. But it worked perfectly as a doctor once I made it through medical school, which was not fun for me at all to
Yeah.
have to sit still for 10 hours a day. But as a doctor, I literally just go from room to room to room. And when I'm talking to that patient, I'm 100% focused. I'm with them 100%. I'm taking notes, and I do whatever I'm going to do. I finish that up, I close it out, and then I go to the next room, and I'm done with that, and literally forget everything. But it's all in the medical record, right? But it works perfectly, and so I set my clinic up to use my ADHD as a superpower. And the same way in the emergency department, I would see a patient, I would deal with it, I would chart it, I'm done, forget about that. Here's a new thing. And so that works perfectly for me with ADHD. And so that's kind of how I do all these things is I work on a plate I'm interested in, I spin it a few times and I'm like, yeah, I'm bored with this. I'm gonna go work on this. And so I have to have several plates spinning or I'll get bored. And but now Nisha, my wife, she is the most diplomatic, caring, ninja level taskmaster that I have ever encountered. She can keep me on task without it feeling like she is keeping me on task. She does it in such a loving way. She does it. She needs to write a book called Leading from Behind, because very often she'll be standing behind me, but she's literally, I'm like her puppet and I'm doing what she says, but it doesn't feel like that to me, and it doesn't appear that way to anybody else. And so she's world class at helping keep me on task, which sometimes is a struggle. I'll be honest,
Yeah.
but
I
it
saw that in
typically,
London. It wasn't easy.
exactly right, right. And so I'm typically out on the farm, working on the farm, listening to an audible, having just a continuous stream of thoughts of consciousness. And that at least 5 times when I'm out working on the farm, I will text my own self something, because if I don't do that, I'll forget it. So that's another great thing that I do is I'll text myself. I'll be like, hey, that woman on your phone, text Ken Berry Mobile, and what do you want to say? And I'll tell her, and then I've completely forgotten everything I thought about in the pasture. But when I get back to my desk and I check my phone, there's all my thoughts. And
I do
so
that
there's,
too, even at night. But
yes,
the other
yes, yeah,
night I
it's a
wrote a text
superpower.
and it's mumble jumble. I can't even read it. But I have
Right.
like just
But structuring your life properly helps with that. But and so if I didn't have ADHD, I don't think I could do all these different things. I might be able to do one thing better than I currently do it, but I don't think I could spin all these plates at the same time. So it's
yep,
actually a superpower now.
I like that. That's a good superpower. And
Yeah,
on Twitter, you face some nasty attacks sometimes, or on social media. How do you
yeah.
handle those?
I approach social media with the um, goal of helping people and teaching people. And you follow me on Twitter. You know, very often I'll use the Socratic method. I won't make a statement. I'll ask a question. And it may be a pointed question, maybe a leading question, but it's still a question. And so a lot of people get very inflamed and they'll try to attack me. And they think that, I guess they think I'm personally invested. And it's like, I'm not, you're just a random stranger. I don't know you. I'm not personally invested in what anybody on social media thinks about me. I'm just trying to put the truth as I know it out there. The people who are ready to hear it, they hear it and they act on it. The people who aren't ready to hear it yet, that's fine. I'll be back here tomorrow, same time, same channel, and I'll throw out something else. Maybe you'll be ready for it then. So I don't take it personally at all. I think that people are way too emotional on social media. They're too eager, too ready to fight, too ready to just. I don't really understand that. And I think Nisha and my study in um,
Stoicism?
stoicism, I think, has helped a lot, because I'm not there to try to convince people. I'm not there to win arguments. I'm not there to win a debate. It's not why I'm there. I'm there because there's a lot of people there, a lot of metabolically sick people who have tried everything and who have given up. And I just throw little nuggets out. And if you're ready for it, you're like, hey, look at this nugget I found. Let me look into this. There you go. Now you're going down the road back to better health. And so I'm not interested in winning a debate. I'm just interested in telling people, hey, there's hope. Look into this. There's hope. Look into this. And that seems to work pretty well.
I think there's hope is the message probably everyone needs to hear. Like that's why I go onto social media to share that it
Yeah.
is about hope. Because
Yeah.
if you try the ADA advice, if you try Weight Watcher, if you try any fancy calorie restricted diet out there, um, it, most people fail. And when they
Sure.
fail and fail and fail, they lose hope. So that it's
Sure.
it's just about hope actually. It hinges
Well,
on hope.
just think back, Roxana, my patients I was talking about that I used to tell join the gym and join Weight Watchers.
Right.
I was basically what I was telling them to do was semi-starve themselves for the rest of their life. That's what I was telling them to do. And they tried that, but you only have so much stamina, so much willpower. No animal can semi-starve itself for the rest of its life. Can't do
Who
that.
said that, like
Give
hunger
up.
always wins?
100%. It's like a built-in drive. If you're hungry,
Yep.
you're eventually going to eat. Yeah. And so they would, and to them, they felt like they were giving up. They felt like a failure, but they weren't the failure. The failure was my stupid advice that I was giving. And so that's the beauty of keto and carnivore, is when I put that advice out there, often in the form of a question, and people are like, well, I've tried everything else. This guy, he seems pretty laid back. He's not trying to sell me anything. I thought, let me try this. And when they try it, what do they get? They get immediate signal. Wow, my knees are not as achy. My heartburn's better. My psoriasis, my dandruff is better. My toenail fungus is better. I'm losing weight. I went to the doctor. My triglycerides are better. My A1C is better. My fatty liver is better. They get this immediate signal. And that's what common sense regular folks, they don't want to do any of the, I call it reindeer games. They don't want to play reindeer games. They just want you to say, do this, 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 and this. And then when they do those things, they get results. That's all they want. And most docs believe their patients they're just not going to follow dietary advice. But what the doctor doesn't understand is they have tried to follow your dietary advice. It is
They
just
just didn't
impossible.
believe it.
But it's impossible for these poor patients to starve themselves for the rest of their lives. That's impossible. And if you remembered your basic physiology, you would remember that we have built-in drives to eat and to drink and to have sex and to sleep. You can't use willpower to overcome those drives. Those drives are hardwired. You cannot overcome them.
Even when you pass out, try to stop breathing. You'll pass out and you'll keep breathing.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
you just said you were like your advice was stupid. How do you handle criticism? Like right now, if you said something on a certain topic and then someone criticized it and he was actually right.
Yeah, this happens very often, as you know. And so first of all, I don't take it personally. I don't get emotionally involved or upset by it. But I do very often when I'm out in the pasture, out in the woods working, I will think, wonder why they believe that. Am I wrong? Have I gotten something wrong? And I'm constantly having that conversation with myself. You've seen me in our private Zooms in the community. You've seen me have those thoughts in real time. Like, I've never thought of it that way before.
Yeah, you
Let me
take
look
notes.
into that. Yeah, and I write it down. Like, let me look into that. There might be something there I've missed. And I'm constantly doing that. Or I'm in the pasture. I'm like, text Ken Berry Mobile, look up blah 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 when you get back to the computer, because you've heard me say that every expert has islands of ignorance. We all
Mm.
have islands of ignorance, and we can't see those. We just all we see when we look is an ocean of all my knowledge, but there's islands of ignorance all in that ocean. And so I'm actually happy when somebody points out an island of ignorance. Then I do an hour or two of reading, and now it's smooth sailing again. I've taken care of that. I fixed that. I adjusted my
Right.
advice. A lot of people, it seems like they take their opinion and their beliefs so personally that they become emotional. And when you become emotional, upset because somebody questioned you, you can't. That's not a fertile field that you can plant seeds of new knowledge in.
It's parts of their existence or their
Yeah, yeah,
value. They are being valued for that. I think that's
yeah,
so why it's so hard to give up these beliefs that we need carbs, that all that. It's actually one of the tools I use. I'm one of the coaches in your private community, along with 9 other super great coaches. One of the tools is a considering cup. If you hear something that's outlandish, then you're not just going to reject it straight away, but you're going to write it down, put it in this consideration cup or considering cup, and then put it aside. And then when
yes,
you're ready, you're going to think about it. You're going to research it. Yeah, that's
yes,
what I do. And it's a
absolutely.
great
That's
coaching tool too.
such a brilliant strategy, because anybody who's so arrogant that when they hear something that disagrees with their paradigm of how the world works, if they're immediately just like, that's stupid, I'm not even going to consider that. How dangerous is that for their own personal their own how other people see them? How
They're
dangerous.
not they're
that
not
you're just
growing.
blind to that and you're just not going to even consider it. Well, what if that's right? Think of your reputation. You should at least think about that in private later. You should be like, well, maybe let me think about that. Let me look this up. Let me do some reading on this. You might be wrong and you're going to destroy your reputation acting like I know everything. I don't need to hear that. That to me, that's just the height of ignorance.
When their income depends on it and their self-worth, it's a hard pill to swallow.
It sure is. It sure is. But if you don't take it personally, if you remain and doctors, especially ER doctors, emergency department doctors, we have to be able to withdraw from a situation and not be emotionally invested in what's happening in front of us.
Yes.
We see horrendous things come in the emergency department, right? And so you have to therapeutically pull your heart away and be like, I can't get emotionally involved with this 5-year-old who was in this terrible car accident, or I won't be able to do my job. And
Yep.
so working in the emergency situations like that gave me some training on how to pull your heart away and still do the best job you can possibly do, but not be emotionally involved. And I kind of use that tool when I'm on social media. When somebody attacks me or points out you're this, that, or the other, I'm just like, I just pull my heart away. It's like, I'm not going to let you hurt my heart, but I will consider your argument. And maybe you're right. We'll see.
It's a process that I'm still going through,
It's
but I'm getting
it
better.
takes a minute.
Yeah. So, okay. Now I also have some questions from my Facebook group. So there's
Sure.
a former type 2 diabetic. I'm just going to read this here. And off insulin, no meds, no thyroid issues, no carb creep. A1C is increasing and some weight gain. And I asked her like what it was exactly. So she's almost 6 years into this diet. Her A1C was 7.5 and is now 5.2. The last one was 5.8 and then 6.3. So she's been like, she's a veteran at this.
Yeah. So there's really can only be just a few explanations of this. If the A1C had went up a little bit, up to 5.8, 5.9, maybe even 6.0, then I would recommend she check a fructosamine, because we know, doctors should know, that there are many things that can make your A1C falsely high or falsely low. And so that may be happening because several of us in the low carb community feel like it's fairly self-evident that when you eat a proper human diet that's so nutrient dense and inflammatory, your red blood cells live longer. That gives them a longer period of time to glycate. And so you might have a falsely elevated A1C. And I see this in about 10%, 5 to 10% of carnivores, that their A1C will creep up like that a little bit. I don't see it taking the A1C up to 6.3. Now, harkening back to what I just said, it's possible that she has one or two other things that's giving her a falsely elevated A1C, right? And so her red blood cells are indeed probably living 120, 130 days now, but she also has these other two things that she may or may not even know she has. And so definitely back to the doctor, thorough examination, thorough workup, looking for anything that could give a falsely elevated A1C. Then I would check a fasting insulin, because it is possible, not caused by the carnivore diet, but it's possible for anybody who was previously type 2 diabetic and used to be super inflamed. It's theoretically possible they could be developing type 1 diabetes. And so she may be one of the rare people that develops type 1 diabetes as an adult. So I would get the fasting insulin to see if that was the case or not. And then the third thing is, even though I've had so many people, Roxana, who was like, no, I'm just carnivore, nothing else but carnivore. And then when I start to question them in detail, as you know, it finds out that they're not just carnivore. They're like, well, every now and then, well, every day, well, every,
Yeah,
just.
no. She is the real deal. Like I'm 100% on that. But
Gotcha. And
could
I'm not
any,
saying I'm not
yeah,
saying it is Carp Creek, but I would have her, if you're coaching her, I would have her send you a detailed picture of everything she eats and drinks every day for a week or two, just so you
yeah,
can lay eyes on it, because it's so easy to delude your own self. I've done it many times, but it's
these are
one of those
people
three
in the
things.
community, not clients. But could it also be that any other autoimmune disease could cause an increase? Because I know with my inflammatory arthritis, I'm struggling to get my insulin down. It's at
Yeah.
13 right now.
Yep. Yep.
I'm
Yep.
waiting for new tests,
That's
but
what I'm saying. Chronic inappropriate inflammation could cause higher cortisol, which causes higher blood sugar, which causes more glycation. There's any number of medical conditions that could be going on in the background that's making her A1C falsely high. And that once she addresses that, then it'll go back to where it should be. Or she finds out she's a type diabetic, adult onset, or she finds out, lo and behold, that spice that I thought was zero carbs got, 10 grams of sugar per teaspoon. And then there you go. It's one of those three things is what it is. And I've
all
yet
right.
to find an exception to that. It's one of those three things every time.
Okay, so the next one is a 60-year-old with no health problems. Why do doctors nearly faint when they say your LDL is over 300? Her CAC score is 2, the Agustin
Yeah.
score.
So doctors are trained that a high LDL, if it's higher than the recommended normal, it puts you at increased risk for heart attack. And so most doctors are just dudes and chicks, right? They're just people.
Yes.
And so if it being a little high is a little dangerous enough you should take a statin or a cholesterol lowering drug, then the higher it is above normal, it's more, oh my godish, right? And so when they see a really high one, they're like, holy crap, I've never seen an LDL that high. And so it freaks them out. They get emotional, which we talked about earlier, right? That you're never thinking rationally if you're emotional. And so then they start to scare the patient and they start to threaten the patient. And in some cases, I'll fire you. I won't be your doctor. You've got to take this medication. Instead of this patient looks so healthy. They seem so mentally healthy and alert and aware. All their other numbers are better. Just the LDL is higher. Everything else is great. And they need to pull their heart away, calm down, step back and say, how does this man or woman, how do they look 10 times healthier than they did a year ago?
Look at the
But yet
patient, not at one marker.
right, holistically, this person, this human, this son or daughter standing in front of me, how is it possible that they look so much healthier than they did a year ago or 2 years ago, but yet they're somehow in more danger? How does that even make sense?
In
And if a
mortal
doctor would
danger.
do that, then they would go back to the drawing board. They'd pull out the physiology textbook. They'd start to read about how pharmaceutical research studies are conducted, how they're funded, how the decision is made to publish or not. And then they would go, I think it's impossible for somebody to look so much healthier and literally be so much healthier, but yet be in more danger because of high LDL. I think that's probably impossible.
And also at 60 years old and being a woman. So there's,
Right.
I'm getting angry about this.
The average doctor does not realize that most of the cholesterol medication research was done in men. They do not
That's
realize
right.
that the research very clearly shows that older women actually live longer and have less cancer the higher their total cholesterol and LDL cholesterol is. It's actually protective against
Yes.
early death and against cancer. They don't know that because that's not what's told to them by the drug as advertisements. And so they just don't know it.
I'm admin a group that's for ladies 50 and over doing keto and other things. And there was one woman and she said, like, I'm overweight, all right. But my LDL was always good, like under 100. I'm not going to say that's good, but it was under 100. And the doctor was
Right.
just waiting for it to creep up. And then one time it was 102. And he said, now you're going on a statin.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
And
But we have
that message of high cholesterol, put them on a statin is beaten into doctors so thoroughly
yes.
that it's hard for some doctors to break free of the shackles of that misinformation. They just can't do it.
And also there's a pill for that. So
That's right.
you can
Yes.
prescribe a pill for higher HDL, even though everyone wants that, probably the holy grail, I don't know. So there's another question here. What could cause trigs to double from 300 to 600 on a proper human diet and mostly OMAD for 18 months, A1C 5.2, cholesterol 209, HDL 38, a little low, cholesterol to HDL ratio of 5.5, and I think the rest was like bun creatine ratio 29.67, albumin globulin serum 1.08. I hope that wasn't too many numbers.
No, that's fine. So my friend Dave Feld, he first made it common knowledge that you can hack your cholesterol level and you can raise it or lower it hundreds of points. Same for the LDL cholesterol. You can raise it or lower it 100 points in literally 2 days just
So
by
if I heard
changing
was
what you
the
eat.
tricks going up from 300 to
Right,
600.
exactly. And so, in that same respect, triglycerides can go up or down hundreds of points in a day or two because of infection, because of inflammation, because of trauma, stress, an undiagnosed medical condition. Um, for some people, drinking a cup of unfiltered coffee the morning of their lab test can double their triglycerides. Not for everybody, but for some people. And so, coffee may be the problem for her. She may have increased her coffee intake or just started drinking coffee, and that doubled her triglycerides. Now, her previous triglycerides of 300 are still high, still too high. We want to get those down definitely under 150, hopefully under 100. But there's a long list of things that can cause your triglycerides to be high, many of which are completely unrelated to your diet. This is another thing that doctors and patients are, we don't expect them to know, but a doctor should know that if somebody comes in with high triglycerides, that doesn't mean that they're eating jelly donuts. It's not necessarily their diet. Now, it often is their diet causing the high triglycerides, but it can absolutely be a long list of other medical conditions that you, doctor, have just missed. And they're suffering from it, but you've missed the diagnosis, and that's why their triglycerides are so high. Having undiagnosed hypothyroidism can make your total cholesterol,
Yes.
your LDL cholesterol, and your triglycerides very high.
And the
And as soon as
HDL
you
low.
fix, yep, that's right. And so as soon as you diagnose and properly fix the hypothyroidism, the lipid panel goes back to beautiful. Yeah, there's any number of medical conditions like that.
So one thing that I just recently heard was that on a carnivore diet or the lion diet, like I'm doing right now, if you eat meat and the ratio of protein is too high and fat is too low, that can also raise triglycerides. And I'm wondering if that's happening to me because my LDL went down from about 200 to 100, and my triglycerides went up from 120 or so to 220.
Mm, yeah,
Like no carb creep, no coffee,
right.
daily
I think
fasting.
that there's enough bio variability in all of us that I think for some people, the amount your protein to fat macros matter more for some of us than for others. I think some people they have to eat high adequate protein to lose weight, to get their lipid triglycerides down where they want it. Other people seem to do better on high protein adequate, and that's where their numbers are seem to optimize. And I think that many of these things about lipid metabolism and diet have not even been discovered yet, because when the first statin came on the market, all doctors quit thinking about this. They stopped trying to figure this stuff out. They're like, why would I want to waste my time reading about this? I'll just put them on Zocor. Boom, problem solved. That saves time. It's convenient. And how often is the convenient thing the wrong decision? Pretty often, right? In the
Yep.
real world. And so, but it would not surprise me at all if she tried 3 months of a higher fat macro and a still adequate but lower protein, that might fix the triglycerides. That wouldn't surprise me at all.
Okay. So I'm going to put this video on YouTube and then they will see the answers. Um, what if carnivore, oh yeah, someone on carnivore after 2 years improves everything, like miraculous improvements except for high blood pressure? That's not budging.
Yep. So in that case, there are 7 or 8 discrete causes of something that doctors call secondary hypertension. The vast majority of hypertension is idiopathic, which in Latin means we don't know what the hell caused it. But in reality, what it is hyperinsulinemia and
Right.
chronic inappropriate inflammation. And when you fix that with a proper human diet, 90% of people's blood pressure goes right back to normal. But every now and then you'll have somebody that everything is perfect. They've lost a ton of weight, they feel better, look better, all the labs are great, but they still got high blood pressure. Until proven otherwise, that person has secondary hypertension. It could be the renal arteries, could be the adrenal glands, could be the thyroid gland, could be there's several other things that any good doctor will know. There's no reason this person should have high blood pressure. Why do they still have high blood pressure? And then the search for the secondary cause of that blood pressure begins. And very often they'll say, oh, you got renal artery stenosis. We're going to have to put a stent in that. As soon as they put the stent in, perfect blood pressure, because the kidneys have got to have a certain blood pressure in order to function as a filter. And if there's stenosis, they're not getting that pressure. They're going to release hormones in the blood that raise your blood pressure, because they've got to have that pressure in order to do their job right. And the stent is lowering the pressure that they feel.
Okay.
And then about 1 or 2% of people, out of all the people with hypertension, about 1 or 2%, they actually have essential or idiopathic hypertension. Like literally, they're going to have to take a low dose of one blood pressure pill, but it's super uncommon.
I have here when is the best time to exercise in the day? Like when you wake up, before bed? Yeah, before bedtime, obviously not. Like, is there a best time to exercise?
Actually, there's a new study out that shows that mild to moderate exercise before bedtime probably doesn't affect your sleep at all. I can remember when I was a young man, I'm not so much a night owl now, but I was a terrible night owl back in my 20s. And I would go to the gym and work out at 11:30 at night, because that's when I felt the urge. And then I would go back home and I'd be asleep by 2. But most people sleep a little better if they don't do a strenuous workout right before bedtime. But new research suggests that mild to moderate exercise before bed might even help you sleep a little better. For me, working out, I go out every 11 a.m. That's when I typically get done doing my morning stuff inside, and I go outside and I work like a dog, anywhere from 2 to 6 hours, depending on what needs to be done on the farm. Pretty heavy duty, pretty exhausting work out there. And when I'm on the farm, I make everything as hard as I can make it. I don't make things easier. I make things harder. And so if I'm trying to cut up a treetop and drag it into a brush pile, I cut the big pieces just so that they're just barely small enough for me to be able to drag them, right?
Yeah, I saw
I
that
try to
video.
make it
That was
harder. I
fun.
don't make it easier. And so I just build that into my farm life. So for me, it's late morning, early afternoon. That's my best time to work out. But I don't think there's a set in stone rule about that. I think some people would do better working out in the evening, some people early morning. I always work out fasted. I think especially if you're trying to lose fat, that's probably your best strategy, is to work out before you've broken your fast, for several reasons. There's several reasons why I recommend that. But I don't think it matters. I think you can work out whenever the spirit moves you to work out. That's when you should work out. And I don't even like calling it working out. I like to say go outside and play. Whatever you enjoy doing. I enjoy working on the farm. That's not working out, but it turns out to be quite a strenuous workout. But I'm just out there having fun.
Lifting heavy stuff. All
That's
right,
right.
one more
Yeah.
question, and then I would like to ask you about the ADS, or where that's going. What are the recommended supplements on the carnivore diet, when best to take them, and also about calcium? I know that we are not supposed to do calcium supplements, but how much calcium do we need anyway? How much do we
Yeah.
get from meat?
Part of the problem with these recommended dietary intakes of all the vitamins and minerals is that the standard deviations were found using on a population of bread eaters, on a population of people eating a high carb diet. And so I predict that within the next 5 to 10 years, some experts in the field are going to have to go back and look at people on a real whole food ketogenic diet and a carnivore diet and say, okay, we're going to have to reassess the recommended daily intake for these people, because we already know that if you're on a carnivore diet, you don't need nearly as much vitamin C. If you're on very low carb keto, you don't need as much vitamin C, because the vitamin C is not competing with the glucose to get into the cells. And
No
so
one's getting
you can have a
scurvy.
much lower, right? You can have a much lower level of vitamin C in your blood, but still have zero signs of symptoms or any kind of scurvy. I just posted a YouTube video about this today. And I think calcium is another one of these. We've been told every woman over the age of 50 needs a calcium supplement, Citracal, Caltrate. I think that's foolishness. And there's some limited research that taking a calcium supplement like that might increase the risk of your body storing calcium in places that it should not store calcium, like in your arterial walls. I don't think that's been proven, but there's enough signal there where it's worrisome. But I don't recommend anybody, even if you have osteoporosis, I don't think you need to take Citracal or Caltrate or Oscal.
What about eggshells?
Yeah, and so I actually have a YouTube video about using eggshells. Eggshells are made predominantly of calcium and collagen and other minerals. They're literally made of what your bones are made of. And so, what a lot of people, instead of taking the calcium supplement, which can also be quite constipating, they'll just save up their eggshells. They'll bake them in the oven, dry them out, and get them above, the boiling point. So you've killed all bacteria. And then they put them in a magic bullet or a ninja and pulverize to where they're the consistency of powdered sugar. And then they'll put a quarter teaspoon, a half teaspoon, they'll sprinkle that on their food every day. Not only are you getting the calcium, but all of the collagen building blocks that the egg's built of, and all the other minerals that are in the egg. And if you're talking about an egg from a pastured chicken that was able to eat bugs and worms and grass seed, there's a lot of minerals in that eggshell. Why throw that away?
I think half an eggshell is enough to cover you for the day.
100%.
And you
yes,
mentioned
exactly.
the RDAs. I think vitamin C, always thought it was B9, but after the talk with Paola, Coach Paola, if you have too much vitamin C, it's actually going to be converted into oxalates. And I find that a little troublesome.
It wouldn't surprise me if taking too much of any vitamin didn't cause a feedback error in your physiology, because that's just, we're not made to take mega doses of anything. But I wouldn't worry about any of that. So the supplements that carnivores need, and I fully believe that if you don't even need these supplements if you'll tweak your carnivore diet. So the supplements that I've seen that people probably benefit from, even on a carnivore diet, is iodine, unless you live near the ocean or eat a ton of seafood, vitamin D3, and vitamin K2. Now, if you look on my YouTube channel, I've got a video about each one of these: vitamin D rich foods, vitamin K rich foods, and iodine rich foods. And if you watch those videos and you include those foods in your carnivore diet, and you eat 2 to 4 ounces, and you eat 2 to 4 ounces of liver 2 or 3 times a week, you don't have to take any supplements whatsoever. You don't need any supplements, which is crazy. There's no other diet on the planet that can definitively say you do not need any supplements on this diet. The vegan diet, for example, there's probably 11 different things, 11 or 12 different vitamins and minerals and fatty acids that you need to supplement, or you're going to develop deficiencies. But on the carnivore end of a proper human diet, if you're eating enough vitamin D rich foods, K2 rich foods, and iodine rich foods, you don't have to take any supplements at all.
And that's basically what I supplement, K2, D3.
And
all right. So the ADS, American Diabetes Society.
Yes.
Why did you start that? We have the ADA.
Right.
It's
The
already
ADA
connecting people for life.
That's right. They want to be connected to people with type 2 diabetes for life. And I don't. Remember, this is not personal for me. I just want to teach somebody with type 2 diabetes how to reverse it and then get on with my life, and they can get on with their life. And I think that's what most people want. And so, after talking to several doctors, MDs and PhDs in the low carb space, after reaching out to the American Diabetes Association multiple times, including their chief medical officer, Dr. Bob. You've seen me reach out to him on Twitter, both diplomatically and snarkily. You've seen both. He's now also he is leaving the ADA. He's not going to be with them any longer coming up in the near future. I've heard that from back channel. We decided to form the Diabetes Society, and it's going to be a nonprofit. It's going to teach people with type 2 how to reverse it completely. It's going to teach people with type 1 how to get and keep a normal A1C for the rest of their life. We're working on raising money for this, getting the website and the social media channels up, and we're going to go from there.
You
And I'm
already
getting the
raised like,
signal.
how much did you raise
I'm
so
getting the
far?
signal from my handler that I've got to go.
All right. All right. But I think it's a great idea in any
Yes.
case. And I think we are also up to the hour also. I'd love to do this again, and
Yes,
I'm
definitely.
gonna see you in the community.
Yes. Thank you so much, Roxana. Have a wonderful day and help me raise money for the ADS.
Alrighty. Thanks.